for those of you watching, it's not anymore, but it is Father's Day today. And I wanted to talk about not necessarily our fathers, but if you have any father figures, not necessarily gender specific, but people who were leaders in your life as a creative people who sort of fathered you into the arts, maybe. Because I know I'll lead so you get some time to think about it. But there was so I was raised a Jehovah's Witness, and in the Kingdom Hall when I was a kid, there was a man there, and it kills me that I can't remember his name, but he would draw pictures, and I was just enamored with that. Like, I just thought it was the coolest thing that this guy could draw pictures. Like, and I mean, I don't really draw anymore, but when I was a kid, that's all I ever did. I loved drawing. And like, when I look back on it, the only picture I ever remember him drawing, and this is ridiculous, but was a polar bear in a snowstorm. And everyone had like some uncle that did that, right? Like, just here's 2 dots on a piece of paper. But like, just the fact that he could, like, if I asked him to draw something, he could draw a picture of it, and I would just go sit next to him and ask him to draw me pictures until the meeting started. And like, for the longest time, I didn't really realize that was like my first real influence of art, because people always ask you, like, well, your parents aren't artists. Well, how did you get into art? And I really couldn't pin it down. But like, and it's the same for people who went to church when they were kids. I was so bored by the whole proceedings. Like, you're a kid. You don't even know what they're talking about. So for me, that was something to look forward to every week, was just to go sit next to this man and just have him draw me a picture and show me how he was drawing it and like, explain it to me. And like, so that was sort of my introduction to like the fact that someone could just make something.
Cool. For me, it was my actual dad, like Phil. It was really inspiring. Like, ever since I was a little kid, like, he's a songwriter, and he painted and did visual art as well. But I'm going to talk specifically about music as an art form. So I would just watch kind of his process as he would write songs, and go into the studio with Mark Hussey at the time in the basement of Ernie King's in Wingham, and then he just released this, like, I thought this was the best album ever. I was so proud of my dad, and then that was really inspiring for me. And then so I just like locked myself in my room and didn't hang out with anybody through high school, and just learned how to play guitar, and then started writing songs myself. And it really just, you sort of that was just, I guess, my life. I don't know. And then once I learned guitar, I started going around and doing gigs in churches mostly, and then started playing in pubs as well, and that was just a really sort of like magical time in my life. So it wasn't ever really something that I like, I'm going to learn I'm going to commit the time to learn this craft. It was just what we did. So I'm really grateful for that I grew up in that sort of experience. Like, we would just be walking through the house, and just my sister would be singing a song, and my other sister would walk by and sing the same line in perfect harmony, and then dad would walk by just singing this song just as we're doing chores in like 3-part harmony, and it's just what we did.
Grew up in like
awesome.
a Disney Channel TV show.
It was kind of like that.
The Partridge Family.
Yeah. Yeah.
I grew up the same way. My father is a visual artist. He's a painter and a photographer. So for me, he was both very inspiring but also daunting as well, because my father is extremely talented, had a name for himself already. So growing up as an artist myself, I constantly compared myself to my father, who was always extremely supportive, but I thought I could never be my dad, And it wasn't until I reached my 30s that I really came into my own, and now I'm inspired by him, but we feed off each other, and so it's amazing that I grew up that way as well. And again, just something you take for granted. Everybody says, you're so you have all this art in your life, and I can't imagine without it. Like, I grew up in a house full of paintings and full of artists having parties and doing artist things, so I couldn't imagine not having that.
That's so mind-boggling to me, because for me, I think there's 2 ways people come to the arts. It's either like a hunger because it's not being fed, or because it's a seed that's being watered.
That's an interesting point.
Very
good point.
There's most of the artists I know either came up in like their dad was a mechanic and was like, no son of mine's gonna be an artist. Or their parents were artists. Like another great example, I watch a lot of Adam Savage online. His dad was again a visual artist, like a painter, and he makes props and really cool things. He did Mythbusters, and when he talks about his upbringing, I'm like, that sounds magical to me. But I wonder though, like, would I be the artist I am now if I was brought in that way?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, for me, my parents aren't artists, but I'm an only child, so I was spoiled. So they saw like early on that every time there was a wedding or something in the community, I'd be up on the dance floor dancing, 2-3 years old. So they were always, plastic instruments and all of this stuff. And then when I was 12 or 13, I discovered the drums. And they signed me up for drum lessons, and that was really what clicked it for me. Is I started taking lessons I've taken, so many different people, and they've all been so great at just kind of fostering the idea of you're never going to be, like drumming especially, it's a constant challenge. You're just really, that's what I really was taught was you're never going to be the best. There's always going to be somebody that's better than you, so watch them,
Yeah.
So that was kind of the thing for me that really got into it. Was I was always very self-conscious and very shy, and for me it was music and being able to, drums especially, it's so loud, it's the total opposite of what I was kind of like back then. So it really brought me out of my shell. So to me it was, I'm really lucky that I had that fostered in me, even though it wasn't necessarily something that I was always around.
Totally. Cool.
I think that's really important too for fathers and mothers too, of course, is to foster those things in your children when you see them, to, not try to quash those artistic endeavors. And, you don't have to go overboard and be a stage mother.
No,
and,
exactly.
But yeah, definitely if you see some potential in your child or even just a spark of interest, try to do something about that.
So, all right, let's talk about a little bit about how you said your dad was an artist, but he probably didn't use the same medium as you, because you should talk a little bit about what you do.
Yeah. Okay. Oh well, that's that's a challenge in itself.
Yeah.
What I do. So I'm a photographer, but that's sort of just about half of what I do. So half of what I do is I go out in the field, and sometimes I go out in minus 30-degree weather and freeze myself to a snowbank, which has happened several times. Or I'll go out and chase thunderstorms and, have a tripod out in lightning. And so it's behind the scenes from what I do is quite a lot in the field doing with camera work. And then the other half of it, I would say, is in the studio working on my computer, doing Photoshop and Lightroom and editing and giving something that spark. Because to me, I kind of see the world as like an otherworldly and magical place. I don't just show up to a scene and take it in and be like, okay, that's what it looked like. I want to show you what it felt like to me.
Yeah.
So that's what I try to convey in my work. I do give it that extra oomph, and no, it doesn't look real, and that's okay. That's not what I'm going for.
Yeah.
So yeah, I go for otherworldly, magical, fantastical photographs.
Is that similar to bringing it back to Dad's because it's Father's Day?
Yeah.
Is that similar to what your dad did with his artwork?
Sort of. My he is a photographer, so he taught me a lot of what I generally know about equipment and going out and, appreciating the light and composition and going out in the morning and getting that good sunshine and whatnot. So a lot of that was just something that I naturally grew up with. But my dad's a painter, so he's an amazing painter. I don't touch paintbrushes because I am not him, and I never will be. And again, going back to that sort of daunting thing, he's just so good at it that just let him.
Yeah.
He's an amazing painter.
Cool.